Hello, my name is Deborah. I'm 60 years old, and this is where everything changed for me. I went to surprise my son on his birthday, holding the same carrot cake he had loved since he was a little boy. My heart was full of hope, believing he would smile the way he used to. But when he opened the door, the sound of laughter and celebration behind him, an entire party I hadn't been, invited to hit me harder than any words ever could. I felt myself shrink, my hands shaking around the cake as he whispered, "Mom, now isn't a good time." Humiliated, I turned and rushed down the steps, my chest tight, my eyes burning. And just when I thought I couldn't fall any lower, a voice behind me said, "Deborah, is that you?" I turned around, and in that moment, I had no idea that the person standing there might help me rewrite my entire story. What happened next was something I never expected, because that moment of pain was only the beginning of a truth far deeper, darker, and more revealing than I imagined. And the person who called my name? They were about to open a door I didn't know existed. You won't believe where this journey leads, what I uncover, or how everything I thought I knew about my family begins to unravel. But before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading your messages and knowing where you are. Now let's understand how this story truly began. I parked a few houses down from Marcus's place, telling myself it didn't mean anything, that I wasn't hiding, that I wasn't bracing for disappointment. I balanced the carrot cake on my lap for a moment, letting the warmth of the Arizona sun seep through the box. It was his favorite. I'd baked it since he was 6 years old, always with extra cinnamon, because he said it made the house smell like love. I had repeated that recipe so many times over the years that I could make it from memory, half asleep, blindfolded, or heartbroken. Today, my hands trembled as I carried it toward his front door. It was his 35th birthday. My only child. The one person I used to believe I'd never lose. And even though he hadn't replied to my message that morning, "Happy birthday, sweetheart. See you later?" I told myself he was busy. I told myself that marriages change routines, not relationships. I told myself I still belonged in his life. But when I reached the last step, I heard laughter inside. Bursts of joy, clinking glasses, someone singing slightly off-key, and something inside me tightened, like a string pulled too hard for too long. I knocked. The door swung open, and for a second, all I saw was the golden blur of balloons behind Marcus. Streamers, a crowded room, a cake already lit on a polished marble counter, people raising phones for photos, celebration without me. Then Marcus's face froze. The color drained from him so quickly, it was like watching someone turn to stone. "Mom, what are you doing here?" The words weren't angry. They were worse. They were shocked, almost panicked, as if my presence itself was a mistake. Before I could answer, Jennifer appeared behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder as if steadying him, more likely claiming him. She wore a white dress, sleek and expensive, and behind her stood Patricia, her mother, draped in diamonds that sparkled brighter than her smile. They both stared at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong house. I looked at the decorations again, at the crowd inside, at the other cake covered in glossy frosting. My throat tightened. I brought your cake," I whispered, holding up the box like evidence. Nobody moved. Jennifer's expression didn't soften. Marcus's eyes darted away. And Patricia just raised one manicured eyebrow and tilted her head, as if studying a stain on a fabric she never intended to wear. The truth landed in my chest with a cruel, simple clarity. I wasn't invited. To my own son's birthday. Something inside me cracked, quiet but devastating, like a hairline fracture in glass. "I didn't want to interrupt," I said, though the tears had already begun to gather. "I thought maybe you forgot to send the message." Marcus flinched as if my words embarrassed him in front of his guests. "Mom, it's not a good time." Not a good time. For the first 35 years of his life, I had been the safe place he always returned to. I held him through fevers, scraped knees, breakups, college disappointments, the night his father died. I showed up every time. Every single time, and now I was an inconvenience. I stepped back, gripping the cake so tightly the cardboard bent. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you." Jennifer exhaled with relief. Patricia placed a hand on her daughter's back, whispering something I couldn't hear but didn't need to. I felt the meaning of it, cold, dismissive, final. I turned and walked down the steps quickly before the tears fully broke. The cake wobbled in my hands as I stumbled, breath-catching. The sound of laughter spilled from the open door behind me, louder, brighter, like the house itself was celebrating my absence. By the time I reached the sidewalk, I was crying openly, humiliation burning hot along my cheeks. I kept walking, vision blurred, until I heard someone call my name. "Deborah? Deborah Mitchell? Is that you?" I turned, wiping my face with the back of my sleeve. A woman stepped out of a sleek silver Tesla, sunglasses pushed up into her thick hair. It took me a second. 30 years is a long time, but then recognition hit. "Claire?" My voice cracked. Claire Henderson, my old college roommate, the one who used to braid my hair before exams and tell me I deserved the whole world. Always ambitious, always brilliant. I hadn't seen her since we were both young mothers, juggling bottles and bills. Life had pulled us into different directions, her into success, me into quiet survival. She looked at me now with eyes full of alarm. "Deborah, what happened? Why are you crying?" And just like that, the walls I was desperately trying to hold up collapsed. "I wasn't invited," I whispered, "to my son's birthday." Claire's expression changed. Anger, sadness, disbelief all flashing across her face. "Oh, honey." She stepped forward and pulled me into a hug. A real one. Warm, grounding, familiar. The kind that makes you remember you're human. When she pulled back, her hands were on my shoulders, steadying me. "Tell me everything. What did they do to you?" For the first time in years, someone asked me that with genuine concern. I clutched the cake to my chest and let myself breathe, really breathe, as if I'd been underwater for far too long. Claire insisted on driving. I think she sensed that if she let me walk back to my car, I might crumble before I reached it. I sat in the passenger seat, the carrot cake still on my lap, its weight now strangely symbolic, like a relic from a life that had slipped away without my noticing. The cafe she chose was quiet, tucked between a plant nursery and a small bookstore. We sat outside under a faded green umbrella, the Arizona heat softened by a gentle breeze. Claire ordered iced teas for both of us and didn't speak until the waiter walked away. She just looked at him, really looked at him, as if trying to piece together the story behind the tears she had witnessed. "Deborah," she finally said softly, "start wherever you need." "I'm here!" The simple kindness of that sentence made my throat close again. I set the cake box on the empty chair beside me. My hands felt oddly light without it. "When Robert died," I began, my voice barely more than a whisper, "I thought Marcus and I would grow closer. Losing a father, losing a husband, it changes people. It changes the way you cling to each other." Claire nodded, her expression warm and patient. One kept going. "It's been 5 years. And the first year after Robert passed, Marcus was around. He came over for dinners, fixed things in the house that I pretended were broken just so he'd visit, called me after work. Little things. And then, little by little, he stopped coming as much. Stopped calling. Stopped asking if I was okay. I rubbed my palms together, remembering the first time I noticed the shift. "He didn't pull away all at once," I said. "It happened in pieces. Quiet, small distances. But after he married Jennifer 3 years ago, it was like watching a door close, inch by inch. And I kept waiting for it to open again." Claire reached across the table, resting her hand on mine. I let the warmth of her touch anchor me. Jennifer isn't cruel, I said quickly, feeling the need to defend her even now. She's polished, perfect in the way people who grow up with money often are. Once she entered Marcus's life, everything became bigger. Lavish vacations, elegant parties, photo shoots, designer clothes. And then there was her mother, Patricia. Even saying her name made something heavy settle in my chest. She has money, I continued quietly. Real money. And she loves to show it. She takes them on trips, buys them things, hosts these extravagant gatherings. I tried, Claire. I tried so hard to fit in, to look like I belonged. But I don't. I'm a retired school teacher living on a pension. I can't compete with private jets and catered brunches. I looked down at my hands, the faint wrinkles along my knuckles, the small burn from the oven still red on my finger. Marcus started calling her Mom. The words came out flat, but inside me, they were anything but. He'd say it casually, like it meant nothing. But every time I heard it, it felt like someone was peeling me away from him, layer by layer. Claire's fingers tightened gently around mine, and I felt tears stinging again, hot and relentless. I kept telling myself it was temporary, I whispered, that he was adjusting to marriage, to a new family. But I was being replaced. Slowly, quietly, completely. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that wraps itself around pain rather than ignoring it. Claire let me breathe before she spoke again. Deborah, I need to tell you something. Her voice had changed, still gentle, but carrying a different weight. I'm not just here visiting old classmates. I'm in town filming a documentary series about family dynamics, how relationships change, fracture, heal. And I think your story matters. I blinked, startled. My story? She nodded. What you're going through, being pushed out of your own son's life. Watching someone with power and money rewrite the definition of family, it's not just your experience. So many people go through this quietly, alone. I swallowed, unsure what to feel. Claire, I don't know if... She shook her head. You don't need to decide right now. But Deborah, let me show you something first. She pulled her phone from her purse and tapped the screen. Then she turned it toward me. The first photo hit me like a physical blow. Marcus and Jennifer, standing in front of a Christmas tree 3 years ago. Patricia between them, her arms around their waists, all 3 of them wearing matching flannel pajamas. The caption read, "Family time." My breath caught. I hadn't been invited that year. Marcus had said, "It'll just be a quiet night, Mom. We're keeping it simple." Claire swiped to another photo. Easter brunch. Patricia holding a pastel-colored basket while Jennifer laughed beside her. Marcus kissed Patricia on the cheek. "Best mom in the world," the caption said. My stomach twisted. Another swipe. Marcus and Jennifer on a beach in Cabo, Patricia lounging behind them under a cabana. They were all wearing white, the kind of coordinated outfits people plan months in advance. "Our family vacation tradition," the caption read. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling my heartbeat stumble. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I didn't know any of this." "You weren't supposed to know," Claire said softly. "But they never told me. They said they weren't traveling much. They said Patricia was just helping them out occasionally." Claire hesitated, then placed the phone in my hand. There were dozens of pictures. Birthday dinners, ski trips, graduations, even a small gathering celebrating Marcus's promotion. All of them with Patricia. None with me. Not a single one. My hands began to shake uncontrollably as I scrolled, images blurring through tears I couldn't stop. Every photo felt like a fresh wound. Every caption like a quiet erasure. "I'm invisible," I whispered, voice cracking. "I've been invisible for years." Claire leaned closer, her expression fierce and tender all at once. "Deborah," she said gently, but with conviction, "are you ready to stop being invisible?" I closed my eyes, feeling something stir deep inside me, a mixture of grief, anger, and a tiny spark of something else. Something I hadn't felt in a very long time: courage. When I opened my eyes again, they were wet, but steady. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm ready." I didn't sleep much the night after Claire showed me those photos. My mind kept circling the same questions, sharp as broken glass. When did Marcus stop seeing me? When did Patricia become the sun around which his life revolved? And why had none of this been mine to know? Grief and confusion sat heavy in my chest, but beneath it, another feeling had begun to form: a quiet resolve. Claire had asked if I was ready to stop being invisible. I had said yes, and now that yes echoed through me like a promise I was afraid to break. When Claire and her documentary team arrived at my house the next morning, I expected to feel overwhelmed, maybe even embarrassed. Instead, I felt steadied, seen, as though someone had placed gentle hands on my shoulders and reminded me that my story mattered. Her crew moved around my living room with careful respect, setting up soft lights that made the space look warmer than I remembered. Producer Jake Tall, thoughtful, with a voice that always sounded like he'd just woken from a nap, smiled kindly as he greeted me. "We're just here to listen," he said. "Whatever you want to share, however you want to share it." I nodded, clutching a mug of tea that had long since gone cold. "Okay, I'll try." The first interviews weren't with me, but with people who had known me and Marcus for years. Friends, teachers from the school where I used to work. I listened from the dining room as familiar voices spoke about the mother I used to be. "She never missed a game," my neighbor Tom said. "Rain or shine, she was there before the team bus." "Deborah was always the loudest cheerleader," another neighbor laughed softly. "Marcus used to get embarrassed but secretly loved it." A younger teacher, someone who'd joined the staff right before I retired, spoke next. "When people talk about devoted parents, Deborah is the kind of person they mean. I've never seen a mother care more fiercely." Hearing those words felt strange, like eavesdropping on my own eulogy. I wanted to cry and smile at the same time. I had loved being Marcus's mother. It had been the greatest joy of my life. And somewhere along the way, I'd started believing that maybe I hadn't been good enough. That maybe my love was too small, too simple, too ordinary to matter anymore. Claire sat beside me during all of it, occasionally squeezing my hand. "You see?" she whispered. "This is who you are, not whatever Patricia's been trying to erase." Later that afternoon, we opened the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed. I hadn't touched it in years. The moment I lifted the lid, the smell of wood and old paper washed over me, followed by a flood of memories I wasn't prepared for. Marcus's childhood was all there, packed into that chest like a time capsule. Photos of him dressed as a pirate for Halloween. His kindergarten handprint painting. Report cards with teachers' notes praising his kindness and curiosity. Ticket stubs from school plays. Soccer medals he refused to take off at bedtime. "Oh my God," Jake whispered as he lifted a stack of DVDs. "These are all him? Every recital, every game, every science fair," I said softly. "I filmed everything." Claire knelt beside me, her expression tender. "Deborah, look at the life you built for him." We watched some of the footage together on Jake's laptop. There was little Marcus, age 7, running toward the camera after scoring a goal, shouting, "Mom, did you see? Did you see?" My voice, bright, joyous, answered from behind the camera. "I saw, sweetheart, I saw everything." I had forgotten the warmth of that time, the way Marcus's face lit up when he saw me in the stands. How he used to hold my hand even when other boys insisted they were too old for that. At one point, Claire paused the video and turned to me. "You didn't just show up for him. You were his anchor." Her words landed deep, carving out a hollow space inside me where ache mixed with pride. Jake called us into the living room later with a strange expression on his face. "I found something odd," he said, opening his laptop again. "Patricia has been paying Marcus and Jennifer's mortgage. I blinked, confused. Paying? Their entire mortgage? For 2 years, he said. Regular deposits, large amounts. My mind struggled to process it, but Marcus told me they were doing well. He said work was steady, that they were saving for the future. Claire leaned forward, brows drawn. Deborah, they've been hiding their financial problems from you. A cold shiver ran through me. Why would they do that? I mean, I couldn't help much, but I could have tried. Jake shook his head. It's not about your help. Patricia's payments aren't gifts. They're structured as loans, very strict ones. I sat back, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Loans? Why would a mother-in-law give loans to her daughter and son-in-law? Claire's eyes darkened. This isn't just about money. There's something else going on. Something in her tone unsettled me. A part of me had suspected Patricia's presence was suffocating, but I hadn't imagined this. We spent the next few days digging deeper. Claire's researcher pulled up public records on Patricial property purchases, business ventures, charity events. But there were gaps, missing months, financial inconsistencies, and a divorce that was never fully documented. It all felt like puzzle pieces scattered in a dark room. One evening, needing air, I walked across the street to visit Helen, my longtime neighbor. She had known Marcus since he was a toddler. She had baked cookies with him, watched cartoons with him when I worked late. She welcomed me into her home with the same warmth she always did, pressing a cup of chamomile tea into my hands before I even sat down. I've been worried about you, she said gently. You haven't looked like yourself. I hesitated before speaking. Helen, have you seen Marcus lately? Around the neighborhood? She nodded slowly. A few times, and once. Well, I probably shouldn't. Please, I whispered. I need to know. She sighed, chewing her lip thoughtfully. I saw Marcus and Jennifer arguing outside their house about 3 months ago. It was late, maybe almost midnight. I was watering the plants and heard them raising their voices. A nervous flutter began in my chest. What were they saying? I couldn't hear Marcus well, but Jennifer... She said something that didn't sit right with me. Helen leaned closer, lowering her voice. She said, "We can't tell her the truth. She ruined everything." My breath caught. What truth? I whispered, more to myself than to Helen. What truth could I ruin? But neither of us had an answer. And for the first time since this began, I felt fear. Not for myself, but for my son. Something dark lingered behind all these pieces. Something I had never seen coming. And now that I sensed it, I couldn't look away. I woke up the next morning with a heaviness in my chest that felt almost physical, as if the night had pressed its full weight against me. I sat on the edge of my bed for a few minutes, staring at the faint light slipping through the blinds, wondering whether courage was something a person found or something a person forced herself to pretend she had. Either way, I knew I couldn't keep living in this fog of half-truths and unanswered questions. I needed to see Marcus. I needed to look my son in the eyes and understand where I fit in his life, if I fit at all. I drove to his office with trembling hands, rehearsing lines that dissolved the moment I formed them. When I walked through the glass doors, the young receptionist looked at me as though I were already a problem she needed to solve. I told her softly, "Please, tell Marcus his mother is here." She typed something, waited, pressed her lips together, then picked up the phone. I stood silently, watching the elevator doors, imagining him stepping out, surprised, softened, maybe even relieved to see me. But when she hung up, she wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. He's unavailable." A slow, cold ache spread through me. "Can you just tell him I need 5 minutes? That it's important?" She hesitated, then shook her head and murmured something about instructions. Before I could say anything else, 2 security guards appeared at my side. They weren't unkind, but their presence alone was enough to shatter whatever dignity I'd walked in with. "Ma'am, we need you to step outside," one of them said. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, embarrassment, disbelief, heartbreak all tangled into one unbearable knot. The guards led me through the lobby, past polished floors and wide windows that distorted my reflection until I barely recognized the woman staring back. Outside, the sunlight felt too harsh, too bright against the humiliation burning beneath my skin. I stood there for a long moment, trying to quiet the tremor in my breath. Then, I saw her. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Patricia stepped out, dressed impeccably, holding a neatly wrapped lunch in her manicured hands. She walked toward the entrance with an ease that made my stomach twist. Before she reached the door, she spotted me. Her lips curved into a slow, satisfied smirk, polite enough to deny hostility, sharp enough to make her meaning unmistakable. She gave a small, condescending wave, like someone acknowledging a distant acquaintance, someone irrelevant. Then she turned her back to me, breezing into the building without hesitation, without shame, without any acknowledgement that she had somehow replaced me. I don't know how long I stood there, minutes, maybe more. My heart felt like it was folding into itself, shrinking, bruising. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel as if it were the only thing keeping me from unraveling entirely. That night, after hours of replaying everything in my head, my phone buzzed. It was Jake. "Deborah, are you home?" "Yes," I whispered. "I found something. Something you need to hear." His voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent of tension that made my pulse quicken. "What is it?" There was a pause, a breath, almost like he was preparing himself. "It's about Patricia." My stomach tightened. "Go on." "I found her divorce records. From her first marriage." I closed my eyes, rubbing my forehead. "Okay. Her husband didn't just leave, Deborah. He disappeared. 25 years ago." My breath caught. "He went missing," Jake continued. "There was an investigation, but nothing was ever proven. After a few years, he was declared legally dead. She collected a very large life insurance payout. The room seemed to tilt slightly, shadows deepening around the corners. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady myself. "Jennifer is from that marriage?" "Yes. But there's more. Jennifer has an older sister, Rachel. Why haven't I ever heard about her?" "Because Rachel cut contact with Patricia decades ago. And from what we can gather, it wasn't a small disagreement." I sank onto the couch, feeling the air around me shift as if the walls themselves were bracing for what came next. "Claire managed to track Rachel down," Jake added. "She lives in Oregon. She agreed to a video call." "Why?" I whispered. His answer was soft but heavy. "Because she said if we're dealing with her mother, we need to know what she's capable of." A chill swept over my spine. A few minutes later, Claire initiated the call. When Rachel's face appeared on the screen, I felt instantly breathless. She looked exhausted, not in a way that came from lack of sleep, but in a way that suggested years, decades of carrying something she had no one to share with. Her eyes were haunted, deep-set, filled with old wounds that had never fully closed. She didn't speak at first. She just looked at me, really looked at me, as if measuring how much truth I could handle. Her shoulders rose with a slow breath, and her expression softened, not with pity, but with recognition, like she'd seen my pain long before meeting me. Finally, she said, "If you're dealing with my mother, you need to understand the kind of woman she is." Her voice didn't shake, but there was a rawness beneath it, a buried history begging to surface. And in that moment, I knew that whatever I had believed about Patricia, about her influence, her wealth, her control, was merely the surface of something far darker. Something that had already touched my life more deeply than I'd realized. Something that was coming for me, piece by piece. Rachel didn't rush into explanations. She sat there on the screen, breathing slowly, gathering pieces of a story that had clearly shredded parts of her long before this moment. Every few seconds her eyes shifted away, as if she were seeing the past play out somewhere just beyond the camera. And then she looked at Meade erectly, steadily, with an honesty so heavy it almost made me flinch. "My mother," she began, "is very good at creating the illusion of love." The words came out soft, but sharp enough to cut. "She knows how to make you feel chosen, protected, necessary, and then, when she has your trust, she starts taking pieces of your life away." I felt my breath hitch because it sounded uncomfortably familiar, like someone describing a pattern I had sensed but never dared to name. Rachel continued, "She isolates her victims. Not violently, not loudly, slowly. She makes you doubt the people who love you. She convinces you she's the only one who truly understands you. And by the time you realize what's happening, you've lost so much, you don't know how to get it back." Her voice trembled on the last sentence, but she kept going, as if she had promised herself long ago that she would never again let Patricia silence her. "She did it to me," she said. "She nearly destroyed my marriage." My heart tightened. "How?" Rachel swallowed, twisting a ring on her finger. "When I got married, she was furious. She said he was taking me away from her. She planted doubts, subtle things at first, accusations that weren't true. She'd imply he didn't appreciate me, wouldn't protect me, wasn't worthy of me. And then she'd act like she was only trying to help." I could almost hear Patricia's voice in those words, warm, polished, dripping with concern that wasn't real. "She kept widening the wedge until everything felt like a choice," Rachel said, her eyes glistening. "Her or him." "And you chose your husband," I whispered. "I did, and I don't regret that choice. But the cost was everything else." Her face tightened with grief. "When I refused to leave him, she cut me out. And then she convinced Jennifer to cut me out too." I blinked. "Your own sister?" "Yes." A broken smile flickered across her lips. "I haven't seen Jennifer in 8 years. I've never met my nephew, and my niece. She was just a baby the last time I held her." Her voice cracked, and she looked down. It wasn't dramatic. It was the quiet unraveling of someone who had held a dam shut for far too long. "Patricia doesn't destroy with violence," she whispered. "She destroys with influence, with money, with fear. She creates dependencies and then controls everything. She gives money, but she never lets it be a gift. It's leverage, a chain, a way to keep them tied to her so tightly that leaving feels impossible." I felt something deep inside me twist. A sickening realization began to form, one I didn't want but couldn't push away. Rachel's voice softened. "Your son isn't choosing her because he loves her more. He's choosing her because she's made him dependent. And dependency feels a lot like devotion when you're drowning." My throat closed, and I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady myself. Marcus wasn't just ignoring me. He wasn't just being cruel. He might be trapped. Claire exchanged a glance with Jake, who had joined the call silently from his laptop. He cleared his throat. I actually reached out to a friend of mine, someone who specializes in, well, forensic accounting." I turned to him, fear already curling around the edges of my voice, and he hesitated, then spoke gently but plainly. "They're in trouble, Deborah. Financial trouble. Serious trouble." The room felt suddenly colder. I didn't know." "You weren't supposed to know." Claire's voice was quiet but fierce. "Patricia makes sure people only see what she wants them to see." Jake flipped through a few notes. "Marcus and Jennifer are drowning in debt. They have credit cards maxed out, personal loans, and their house. It has a second mortgage, taken out over a year ago." My breath caught. Marcus had never said a word. Jennifer had never hinted. Not one sign that they were struggling under that kind of weight. "And Patricia?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Jake nodded grimly. "She's been giving them money. A lot of it, but she's keeping detailed records of every dollar. Records? I whispered. He met my eyes. She's categorizing everything as loans. Something inside me broke open. Something raw, maternal, protective. All the confusion, the rejection, the distance, it shifted into horrifying clarity. Rachel exhaled, her voice trembling. That's what she does. She buys her children, and once she owns enough of their life, she owns their loyalty. A trembling fury rose inside, mean-ought anger at Marcus, but at the invisible chains he didn't even realize he was wearing. She's not just replacing me, I said, my voice cracking. She's buying my son, and holding him hostage. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. For the first time, I understood that my heartbreak wasn't the whole story. There was something deeper happening, something dangerous, manipulative, suffocating. Something that had already taken one daughter from Rachel, and was now tightening its grip around my son, and I felt something shift inside me. A spark not of rage, but of resolve. Because now I wasn't just fighting to be seen. I was fighting to bring my son back from someone who had stolen far too much from far too many. I told myself 100 times that going over there unannounced was a mistake. That I should wait for Claire, or for the team, or for some calmer part of myself that could speak without shaking. But there are moments in a mother's life when hesitation becomes unbearable. When doing nothing feels like losing a part of your child forever. And that night, after everything I had learned, the thought of Marcus sitting under Patricia's shadow made something inside me twist so painfully that I couldn't breathe. So I drove. I didn't think about how it would look, or what I would say, or how my voice would sound. I just knew I had to see him. I had to look into his eyes and find even the smallest piece of the boy I raised, the boy who once cried into my shoulder after losing a school election, who once brought me burnt pancakes for Mother's Day, who once asked me at 14 if I thought he was a good person. Marcus had always been good. It was the world around him that had grown sharp. When I pulled up to the house, the windows were warm with light. Shadows moved behind the curtains. Slow, calm movements that belonged to people who thought their world was safe. I walked up the path with a heart that felt too big, too bruised for my chest. Before I could lose my nerve, I rang the bell. I heard voices inside, a clatter of silverware, laughter, a family moment I wasn't part of. The door opened. Jennifer stood there, her face pale, eyes widening in shock. For a second, I saw something, a flutter of fear, maybe guilt, maybe longing, but she masked it quickly. "Deborah, you shouldn't. I need to speak to my son," I said softly, but with a firmness I didn't know I still possessed. When she hesitated, glancing back over her shoulder, I stepped past her before she could stop me. The house smelled like rosemary chicken. Candles flickered on the dining table, and there, at its head, where I should have seen Marcus or Jennifer, sat Patricia. Perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect control. She folded her napkin with delicate fingers as though my presence were nothing but a slightly inconvenient surprise. "Deborah," she sang, her voice dripping honey. How unexpected. Her sweetness hit me like poison beautiful on the surface, deadly beneath. I didn't sit. I didn't move closer. I stood behind a chair and pressed my shaking hands into the wood until my knuckles hurt. "I know what you're doing," I said. My voice was steady, shockingly steady. "I know about the loans, the records, the control." A ripple went through the room. Jennifer's spoon clinked softly against her plate. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "Mom," he said sharply, "you need to leave." The word "mom" coming from him but feeling so far awake cut through me. Jennifer still wouldn't look at me. She stared down at her lap, her fingers twisting the hem of her napkin like a child afraid of punishment. Patricia didn't even flinch. She picked up her wine glass, swirling it lazily. Your son chose his real family, she said, her tone gentle, almost pitying. Accept it gracefully. For a moment, I felt something rise inside me that terrified me, a rage so deep, so primal, that I thought it might burn the room down. But I swallowed it. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to remember why I came. Not for Patricia, for Marcus. I turned to him. "Marcus, baby," I whispered, the old endearment slipping out without permission. "I'm your mother. I raised you alone after your father died. I held you when you were sick, stayed up with you for school projects, worked extra hours so you could play soccer. Please, remember." His jaw clenched so tightly I could almost hear the strain. He wouldn't meet my eyes either. Instead, he looked past me toward Patricia, seeking something: approval, permission, direction. I hated that I recognized the look. I had once received it from my own students, the ones who were afraid of disappointing someone they depended on too deeply. Then he said it. The sentence that cracked something clean through my spine. "Patricia's been more of a mother these past few years than you ever were." I felt the words land physically, like being struck. For a second, the room blurred. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream not at him, but at whatever had been done to him to make him believe such a thing. But when I finally managed to inhale, something inside me softened instead of shattering. He was hurting. He was cornered. He was trapped in something he didn't know how to name. And still, it broke me. "I see," I whispered. It was all I could manage. "I see." No one spoke. The silence felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark. I turned to leave. My legs felt unsteady, as though they belonged to someone else. I walked through the hallway in a fog, barely sensing Jennifer behind me until I reached the front door. She followed quietly, her steps small, hesitant. Just before I stepped out, she brushed past me, not enough to draw attention, barely a movement at all, and something thin slipped into my hand. For a moment, I didn't understand. I looked up at her, confused. Her eyes finally met mine, and what I saw there made my stomach twist. Fear, desperation, shame, and a silent plea. She whispered so softly, I wasn't sure I hadn't imagined it. "I'm sorry." Then she closed the door. Outside, the air felt colder than before, sharp against my skin. I walked down the path, my hands trembling as I opened the folded paper. The ink was smudged as if written in a hurry. 4 words, 4 small, devastating words. "Help us. She won't let us leave. She owns us." I read it again, unsure whether my heart was breaking or waking up. Because in that moment, everything became painfully, terrifyingly clear. Marcus wasn't choosing Patricia. He was surviving her. And now I wasn't just a mother fighting for a place in her son's life. I was the only person left who could help him escape. I barely slept after the night Jennifer slipped that note into my hand. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Patricia's smile, the smug tilt of her head, the satisfaction in her gaze, as if she already believed she'd won. As if she didn't consider, even for a second, that a mother's love might be stronger than her money, her manipulation, or the fear she fed like poison into the lives around her. Claire arrived early the next morning, followed by her team cameras, lights, laptops, stacks of documents. They moved through my little living room with urgent purpose, their voices hushed, their expressions tight. Something had shifted. The note changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just about telling my story. It was about exposing a pattern, a system, a woman who collected broken families like trophies. Jake, the producer, sat at my dining table, flipping through folders as if trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. "There's something here," he kept muttering, "something bigger than we thought." By afternoon, they found it. 3 families, 3 separate stories, each with the same beginning. Patricia approached them during a moment of financial struggle. Each time she offered help, money, connections, a temporary safety net, and each time, once they accepted, she tightened her grip. She inserted herself into decisions, demanded loyalty, created dependency. Eventually, she took control of everything: bank accounts, childcare decisions, even medical choices. And then there was the worst one: the family who lost custody. Jake sat across from me as he explained, his voice low, steady. She orchestrated the entire legal battle. She manipulated evidence, weaponized their debt, even paid for an evaluator who was later discredited. Their kids live with her now. They haven't seen them in 4 years. I covered my mouth with my hand. The room seemed to tilt. I felt cold down to my bones. She took their children? Jake nodded grimly. And she's trying to do the same to Marcus and Jennifer. We need to expose her before she destroys another family. My hands trembled so violently I had to fold them in my lap. The idea of Marcus, my sweet lost boy, being swallowed whole by Patricia's hunger for control terrified me, and Jennifer. She was already half broken. I could see that now. Claire sat beside me, touching my shoulder lightly. We have enough for the documentary. But not just a documentary, Deborah. A public reveal. A live premiere. If we bring everyone together, if we make her face what she's done in a room full of witnesses, she crack. It's who she is. A public event? My voice came out thin, strained. Claire. That would humiliate Marcus. Her face softened. I know. And I'm sorry. But he's already drowning. If we don't do this, if Patricia keeps controlling him, you may never see your grandchildren again. You may lose him forever. The words sank into me like stones. My fear battled with my love, twisting painfully. I closed my eyes for a moment, imagining Marcus as a father, imagining a baby who might never know me, imagining Patricia raising another generation under her shadow. Something inside me hardened, not violently, but with a quiet, aching conviction. Okay, I whispered. Let's do it. The invitations went out that evening. Elegant envelopes, formal fonts, a warm announcement for an event honoring modern families and their complexities. A title that stroked Patricia's ego so perfectly that Claire almost laughed when Jake read her RSVP aloud less than an hour later. She's coming, he said, shaking his head. Front row, probably. I wasn't surprised. People like Patricia loved attention the way plants loved sunlight, greedily, hungrily, expansively. The next morning, my phone rang. I nearly dropped it when I saw the name. Marcus. It was the first time he'd called me in months. My heart stuttered. I answered with a shaky hello. His voice was tight, defensive, strained. Mom, what are you planning? I breathed slowly before answering. For the first time in years, I didn't speak to him like he was fragile. I spoke to him like he was someone who needed truth more than comfort. I'm telling my story, I said gently. If you can't face it, don't come. Come. There was silence, a long one. I could hear him breathing shallowly like a child trying not to cry. Then he hung up. The 2 days that followed were a blur of editing, interviews, phone calls, and strategy sessions. Claire's team worked with an intensity that made me feel like we were preparing for a battle rather than a premiere, and maybe we were. Maybe this was the only battlefield where I had a chance against someone like Patricia. But nothing prepared me for what happened 2 nights before the event. I had already changed into pajamas. The house was quiet, still, the kind of silence that carries a weight of anticipation. Then came the knock, soft, frantic, almost panicked. I froze. It was nearly midnight. When I opened the door, Jennifer stood there, shaking violently. Her face was streaked with tears, mascara smudged under her eyes like bruises. Her hair was messy, her clothes disheveled, and she held her stomach as though protecting something fragile. Jennifer? I whispered. Sweetheart, what's... She knows, she gasped, stumbling into my arms. She knows I talked to you. She said she'll ruin us. she said. Her voice broke into sobs so deep they shook her whole body. I held her, my arms instinctively wrapping around her the way they used to wrap around Marcus when he was small. Come inside, sit down, breathe. But she couldn't breathe. She collapsed to her knees, grabbing my hands desperately. I'm pregnant, she choked out. And she said she called child services the moment the baby is born if we don't sign over custody. She said she has files on us, recordings of our fights, pictures she staged, everything she needs to prove we're unfit. I felt the world stop. Pregnant. My grandchild. And Patricia wanted to take that child too. Jennifer sobbed until her forehead pressed against my leg, her words breaking into fragments. We can't leave her. We can't breathe. She owns us. I knelt down with her, holding her face in my hands, wiping her tears with my thumbs. No, I whispered, my voice steady with a strength I didn't know I had. She doesn't own you. She doesn't own Marcus, and she will never own your child. Jennifer looked at me with eyes full of terror and hope, mixed in a way that made my heart ache. We're going to stop her, I said, together. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something inside me ignite. Not rage, not desperation, but the fierce, unshakable love of a mother who refuses to lose her family. Deborah didn't expect Jennifer to collapse so completely into her arms. She had imagined anger, maybe panic, but not this shaking, wordless terror that made Jennifer feel suddenly small, like a child who had been pretending to be an adult for far too long. Deborah wrapped her arms around her, feeling the tremors in the young woman's back, and for a moment neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say yet, only the soft sound of Jennifer's breath catching against Deborah's shoulder, the quiet proof that everything in her life had finally become too heavy to hide. When Jennifer finally found her voice, it came out cracked and thin. She planned this pregnancy, she said, her fingers twisting in Deborah's sweater as if anchoring herself to something solid. We thought it was a gift. Patricia kept saying she wanted to help us start a family, but it wasn't help. It was control, all of it. Deborah pulled back just enough to see the younger woman's face. Her mascara had smeared beneath her eyes, and her mouth trembled with each inhale. Tell me, Deborah whispered, because she knew Jennifer needed the invitation. Tell me everything. Jennifer nodded, swallowing hard. She convinced us to use IVF. She paid for it. Said it was safer, more certain. Her eyes clouded with shame. But the contracts. Deborah, we didn't read them carefully. We trusted her. They had clauses buried inside. Clauses about her having involvement rights. Clauses about decision-making, access, authority. I didn't understand what I was signing at the time. I was scared. Marcus and I were fighting a lot then, and she said it was because we were overwhelmed and she could guide us through it. Deborah's stomach tightened. Contracts giving her grandparental rights, she murmured, piecing the nightmare together. My God. Jennifer's gaze flicked up, wide and desperate. I never wanted to push you out, she said suddenly, the words tumbling out like they had been caged for months. I missed you. I missed having someone who cared about me. But she made us choose. She always made it sound like you were the danger. That you'd try to take Marcus away from me. Or take our baby. Her voice cracked entirely. I'm so sorry. The apology split Deborah open and stitched her back together all at once. She cupped Jennifer's face gently. Sweetheart, she said, her voice soft, steady, full of ache and love. I don't want anything except for you to be safe. For Marcus to be free. For that baby to grow up in love, not ownership. She brushed a tear from Jennifer's cheek. None of this is your fault. Patricia manipulates good intentions until people can't recognize themselves anymore. I'm just glad you came to me. Jennifer leaned into her hand, exhausted and relieved. I didn't know where else to go. "You came to the right place," Deborah said. Claire arrived within the hour, and her lawyer friend soon after. They gathered around Deborah's dining table, papers spread out, contracts highlighted, coffee cooling untouched. The lawyer examined the documents with increasing disgust. "These clauses are predatory," he said finally. "And honestly, they'd never hold up cleanly in court. Patricia's influence is all over this. She pushed them into signing without proper counsel. If she ever tried to enforce these rights, especially tied to coercion or threats, judges don't respond well to power plays masquerading as family involvement. You could fight this." Jennifer let out a small, shaky breath. "So we're not trapped?" The lawyer shook his head. "Not legally. She's been ruling through fear, not law." Jennifer closed her eyes, and a tear escaped. This time, not from fear, but from relief. Claire folded her hands. "We need more than legal leverage," she said. "We need proof of her coercion. A confession. Something undeniable." She paused. "Jennifer, would you be willing to wear a wire at the documentary event?" Jennifer's eyes widened. "A wire?" Reached for her hand. "Only if you feel safe," she said gently. "Only if you choose it." Jennifer looked between them, the lawyer, Claire, Deborah, and then down at her stomach. She rested a protective hand over it, inhaled, and squared her shoulders. "If it means my baby will be born free of her," she whispered, "I'll do it." Something shifted in the room then. Something quiet but powerful. Deborah felt it like a flame relighting inside her chests, small but real warming parts of her she'd thought Patricia had extinguished forever. "We end this together," she said, the words steady and full. And when Jennifer nodded, Deborah squeezed her hand, sealing the vow. For the next few days, they rehearsed everything. Claire coached Jennifer on how to phrase questions that would draw Patricia into bragging or exposing herself. They practiced tone, posture, expressions. They predicted Patricia's reactions with eerie accuracy. Rachel arrived from Oregon the night before the event. When Deborah opened the door and saw her standing there, older, thinner, but still carrying that quiet brightness in her eyes, Deborah felt a wave of emotion rise unexpectedly. Rachel didn't hesitate. She folded Deborah into a hug that seemed to carry 8 years of silence, grief, and hope. "I can't run anymore," Rachel whispered. "I'm ready." "You're not alone," Deborah said. They stayed up late, drinking tea, going over the plan, sharing memories of the people they used to be before Patricia carved so much fear into their lives. There were tears, but there was laughter too small, fragile, but real. Just after midnight, headlights swept across the front window. Deborah went to the door, heart quickening, and when she opened it, Marcus stood on the porch, hair disheveled, eyes red, expression torn apart. "Jennifer?" he asked, voice unsteady. "Is she here?" Jennifer stepped into the doorway beside Deborah. Marcus froze. His gaze moved from his wife to his mother, and something inside him seemed to crack. His face shifted, betrayal tightening his jaw, confusion softening it, then a slow, dawning relief that broke him open. He exhaled shakily. I thought I lost both of you." Jennifer stepped forward, touching his arm. "You didn't lose us. We were just lost." Deborah watched the two of them, her heart trembling with something she hadn't dared feel in months. Hope. Not naive hope, not blind hope, but the fragile, hard-earned kind that comes after surviving things designed to break you. And for the first time, she let herself believe that the next chapter, whatever it held, might not be written in Patricia's shadow at all. Deborah had not expected the theater to look so breathtaking. Crystal lights cascaded down the high ceilings like falling stars, casting warm reflections over the marble floors and the gold-trimmed walls. 200 guests filled the lobby, their conversations weaving into a soft hum that lifted and dipped like an orchestra warming up. This wasn't merely an event. It was a stage built for truth, for collapse, for rebirth. She stood just inside the entrance for a moment, letting the air settle around her. Her navy dress, simple but elegant, hugged her figure softly. Claire had insisted her hair be styled by a professional loose waves. Silver strands blended into dark chestnut in a way that made her look quietly powerful. When Deborah saw her reflection earlier, she hardly recognized herself. She looked ready, and for the first time, she believed she truly was. Claire touched her arm gently. "You okay?" "Yes," Deborah said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her own voice. "Tonight is the beginning." Guests turned as the next arrival swept through the lobby. The energy shifted in an instant, like a cold gust entering a warm room. Patricia strode in wearing diamonds that sparkled with each step, the kind of display that demanded attention rather than earned it. Her dress was cream-colored silk, her lips painted a severe red. Jennifer and Marcus walked beside her, positioned a step behind, their postures stiff, their expressions hollow like ornaments arranged for display. Deborah felt something inside her twist, but not with fear. It was a deep, aching sorrow for what Patricia had made of them. But when Jennifer's eyes found hers, there was a softness there, a secret understanding, a shared resolve. Marcus didn't look at her, not yet. His gaze stayed forward, guarded, tense. Inside the theater, the lights dimmed and Claire's film began. At first, the screen glowed with warm, nostalgic softness. Photos of Deborah holding baby Marcus, her hair messier back then, her smile wide and unguarded. Images of birthday cakes made from boxed mix, Halloween costumes sewn by hand. School recitals where Deborah stood in the back with a camcorder that barely worked. Ordinary moments made extraordinary by love. People murmured softly in the rows behind her. Deborah felt a sting behind her eyes. She hadn't expected to see these memories projected larger than life, hadn't realized how much she missed being seen for who she truly was. Then came the shift. The tone of the film darkened, subtly at first, photos showing Patricia at birthdays she'd invited herself to, her expensive gifts dwarfing Deborah's thoughtful ones. Pictures where Deborah had been pushed to the edges of the frame. Videos where Patricia guided Marcus by the shoulders, smiling like the world belonged to her. The murmurs grew louder, uncomfortable, and here, Claire's voice narrated over the footage, we begin to see the pattern. The screen filled with documents, emails from Patricia, text messages, calendar entries marking family events Deborah was never informed about. Shots of the expensive vacations Marcus and Jennifer had taken paid for by Patricia Weil. Deborah sat alone on holidays waiting for calls that never came. And then, the other families. The audience gasped as Claire revealed their stories. Families who once believed Patricia was their savior, only to find their lives slowly dismantled. One couple forced into bankruptcy. One mother manipulated into moving states. One family, this brought a collective shiver, who lost custody of their children after. Patricia allegedly orchestrated a legal case portraying them as unstable. Deborah held her breath. The lights on stage brightened, and Rachel stepped forward. Her steps were steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she approached the microphone. She faced the audience, then turned deliberately to look at her mother. "Patricia," she said, her voice soft but unwavering, "you did this to me." A ripple of emotion passed through the room. "You isolated me from my husband, from my own children," Rachel continued. "You made me believe I couldn't survive without you. And when I chose love over your control, you punished me. You took my sister from me. You took 8 years of my life." The room fell into stunned silence. Patricia rose abruptly, diamonds flashing under the lights. "This is slander," she snapped, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You are all jealous of what I have given them. Jealous of the life I've built. Jealous of my success." Several guests recoiled. A few whispered. Most stared. Jennifer stood. She was trembling, but she held the microphone with both hands, anchoring herself. "Tell them," she said, looking directly at Patricia, about the custody papers. Patricia froze. A stillness washed over the room, brittle and suffocating. The ones giving you control over our child? Tell them how you threatened to call child services if we didn't obey you. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. Tell them about the recordings you made, the staged photos, the manipulation, the fear. Marcus turned to Patricia then, truly seeing her for the first time, his face drained of color. "You did this?" he whispered. His voice shook with something between disbelief and heartbreak. "On purpose?" Patricia tried to speak, but no sound came out. She grabbed her purse, turning sharply to leave, but Deborah stepped in front of her. The crowd held its breath. Deborah's voice rose, not loud, not dramatic, but clear enough to fill every corner of the theater. "For 3 years," she said, "you made me doubt my worth as a mother. You made me believe I had failed my son. You tried to buy his love, drown him in gifts and debt and dependence." Her eyes didn't waver, but love isn't for sale. Patricia stiffened, eyes burning with fury. Deborah stepped aside just enough to face the audience. "I'm not perfect," she said. Her voice trembled with honesty, but she didn't shy away from it. "But I loved my son through every struggle, every joy, every mistake. And no amount of money, no manipulation, no intimidation changes that." Her chest rose and fell with the weight of everything she had carried, everything she had survived. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full, charged, thick with truth finally spoken aloud. And in that silence, Marcus turned to look at his mother, really look. And everything began to change. The moment Patricia stormed out of the theater, the room felt as if a great weight had finally slipped off its axis. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she pushed through the doors, her threats echoing behind her like the last sparks of a dying fire. "I'll sue all of you. This is defamation. You'll regret this." But no one followed her. No one defended her. And as the doors slammed shut, the audience rose to their feet in a wave, slowly at first, then fully, completely applauding not the drama, not the spectacle, but the truth that had finally broken through. A standing ovation. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. My knees felt weak, my vision blurred from the intensity of the moment. Claire squeezed my hand, but gently, almost reverently, because she knew this wasn't hers. This was mine. And then I saw him. Marcus. He stepped toward me as if wading through invisible water. His breaths unsteady, tears streaming freely down his cheeks. His face, my boy's face, was raw, open, stripped of pride or fear or defenses. "Mom," he whispered, voice cracking. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was so stupid." The apology broke something inside me, a dam I didn't know I'd been holding for years. He reached me and collapsed into my arms, not as a grown man, not as a husband or soon-to-be father, but as the little boy who used to run to me after every scraped knee, every nightmare, every childhood disappointment. I held him as his shoulders shook, my hand instinctively finding his hair the way it used to. "Oh, baby," I murmured, "my sweet boy." Jennifer approached slowly, as if afraid she didn't have the right. Her mascara was smudged, her eyes red and swollen. She looked at me with so much shame it hurt to witness. "Deborah, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I should have fought harder. I should have." I reached out before she could finish. I pulled her into us, holding them both together, both trembling, both breaking. My arms wrapped around the family I had feared I'd lost forever. "We fix this together," I whispered. "We're family. And family doesn't end when things get hard. It begins there." They cried against me, apologizing again and again, until their tears finally gave way to breath steady, fragile, hopeful. The next months unfolded like a quiet sunrise after a long storm. Patricia tried everything: lawsuits, statements, threats. But Claire's documentary had exposed more than she realized. Once her past victims saw the film, they came forward in wave statements, documents, testimonies. A class action lawsuit formed, not built on anger but on survival, on people reclaiming their voices. Patricia lost everything she had built on manipulation. For the first time, she faced consequences no diamond necklace could shield her from. Marcus and Jennifer packed up their sprawling, suffocating house and moved into a smaller place across town, a home with creaky floors and mismatched cabinets, but one filled with air that didn't choke them. They paid their own bills. They cooked their own meals. They made choices without waiting for permission. For the first time, they could breathe. Jennifer and Rachel met in person for the first time in 8 years. Their reunion was soft and trembling, two sisters rediscovering the shape of each other's lives after being torn apart. When Rachel met her niece and nephew for the first time, she cried the way someone cries when a missing limb is finally returned. And then came Sunday dinner. My kitchen, warm with the smell of roasted chicken, herbs, and buttery rolls. Laughter spilled from the living room, real laughter, unforced, unshadowed. Rachel chopped vegetables beside me, humming softly. Jennifer set the table with a gentleness I hadn't seen in years. Marcus chased his toddler across the floor while my infant granddaughter slept against his chest. When I placed the carrot cake, his favorite, always onto the table, Marcus looked at me with a smile that held no hesitation, no lingering doubt. He cut the first slice and offered it to me, hands trembling just slightly. "To the best mom in the world," he said. My throat tightened. Tears welled. My grandson climbed into my lap, his tiny hands warm against my wrist. I pulled him close, breathing in the sweetness of a moment I once believed would never come. Later, after dinner, I placed a new family photo on the wall. Everyone stood together. Marcus, Jennifer, the children, Rachel, and me. Everyone smiling, leaning into each other, connected by something deeper than blood. Patricia wasn't in the picture. She never would be again. Looking at that frame, that captured second of truth, I felt no hatred left. Only peace. Only gratitude. I learned that love isn't about money or lavish gifts. It's about showing up. And I never stopped showing up. Not once. If you want to follow more stories of truth, healing, and emotional strength, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.